Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining today's live stream. In this session, we will be building a RESTful API using Node.js and Express from the ground up. This tutorial is designed to guide you through the essential steps from setting up the project environment, creating routes, handling HTTP methods, to managing data effectively. Whether you are new to backend development or looking to reinforce your knowledge, I hope you will find this session valuable and informative. Please feel free to ask any questions in the chat at any time. I'm here to help you and support your learning. Let's get started and build something great together. So, what do we have to start with? We know nowadays we have different framework of JavaScript we deal with. We have exactly different libraries and different things that we use to build our backend application, but today we have choose to use one of them, so which is Node.js and Express. So let's start by making our project directory, and it must be, let me go to my Discord, VS Code. First of all, let me direct it to the document where I keep my projects, and I will start by creating my project directory, which is Node Express API. And then after creating my directory, because I use my terminal commands, I enter my directory is created, and then I will go to my directory, which is Node Express API. And then after navigating inside my folder, I will initialize a new Node.js project by creating a package.json file with the default setting of with default settings, of course. So let's just jump into it. So by this, we have to right here, my default setting, it will show Express API. My version is 1. The main will be index.js. Script, it will have test, echo. These are the default one. Keyword, there is none. Author, none. License, ISC, and description is none. So this is the default one. Actually, when you write this command npm initialize -y, exactly it means that we are initializing our new node.js project by creating a package.json. So if we check well here, let me show you by this thing what I have my package.json created. So how do we actually load our file in our VS Code? Let me do open folder, go to my document where I have created it, and it is Node Express API, and open. Alright, yes guys, as you can see, it has opened my Node Express API, as you see right here. I'll try to zoom a little bit because my text is somehow little. Alright, we have it on this part. What next? What do we have next? What do we have to do after we initialize our package? And first of all, guys, check if your npm and node they are all installed well. Make sure that you go to the official website for Node, you download and install those packages. That is the first thing. And then the next, after we have done with this step, let's install our Express. We will have to run npm install Express like this, and we enter. As you see right here, my package is installed. As you see, installing the Express library, which is a minimum and flexible Node.js web framework that helps us to create API easily. So after this, if you remember well, in our package there is another thing that we have seen. We have seen that we will have index.js. This will be our main file that we will be using while creating our file that we hold all the data that we will need. So let's just dive deeper and create this file. We come here, we just add the file index.js, and in index.js right now it is empty. Let's try to import our Express module so you can use it. So to do this, you have to write constant express equal to require express. Alright guys, this is how you actually access the Express you have installed. So how are we going to be using this? We start by constant app for our application, and it will access our Express module. And this Express module, after this we will need what we call a port. So after we create the instance of Express application, think of app as your server, by the way. And then this port, we're gonna create this port of 300 defines the port number your server will listen to. And after this, we'll go to the next line, and this next line, it will add the middleware that allows your server to parse incoming requests with JSON payloads. Without this, Express won't understand a JSON sent from client. So how do we make it? We start by app, because we have already defined it right here, dot use. I just use dot use. Alright, express dot JSON, like this, and we close our line. And then after this, we will go to define a route handler for a get request to the route path. So right now, by making a route, we start by finding our app, and then we put method that we will be using, which is get, and then right here we define the route that we want, which is our main one, /, and then this part will hold our argument, the request and response, and inside this, first close my, okay, we will send a response of hello from the API, just like this. Eventually, so when someone visits HTTP localhost, which is on post of 3000, the server sends back the plain text message saying hello from the API. So before we move on and test our API, let's first start the server and make it listen for the request on the port, because right now it is not showing exactly what port is listening to. So by this, we have to write app.listen, and you have to put our port on this part, and then the function that we hold our results, right? On this part, we do console.log because we don't want to reveal this on client side. So server running on http, just to indicate what exactly localhost we are using, the port exactly that we are using, and here I will add port like this, and then I close my console, I terminate it. Alright, good. Now we can set our server and make it really listen for requests on port 3000. Now let us try to run our application and see how exactly this will work. So we will go and write npm start, and when do npm start, this is the command to start our server, and you do enter. So as we see, we have, it is missing a script start. I just check right here. Alright, here we didn't define it in our script, and we will do start, and this start we have a command that will learn our file, which is index, and this index exactly is one that will hold our code. So let's see how exactly we run this one. There is a different way we can do this exactly. So let me first show you. On this part we have seen that it has triggered some error. So they say you can, to see the list to run, no, this one is not necessary. Let me clear my code, and I come here, and on start I write node index.js like this. So on this part our node will start our index.js. Let's test and see if this exactly will give us our expected results. npm start, and when we hit start, you see right here it will give us our server that we are working on. So this is our first command on how we can start our server that will be actually providing our endpoint that we will be testing. Let us just jump into our postman, and our postman we're gonna be testing exactly how we, alright, let me try to share the whole screen. Okay, nice. So on this part, I think you can see my screen right now. Okay, so on this part we have to create our correction. Let me make it blank, and this correction I will name it, let me rename this one to, the text is still little, let me rename this one okay, you can see that there is, let me rename it right here. I name it node express like this, node express. I will record node express API like this, and then I add my request on this part. So by adding my request, if I remember well, when I turn back to my code right here, you will see it is running on this port, on this URL. I will copy it, and after copying this one, I'll paste on this part, and we test and see if the result will get that hello. When I send my request, and see, we will actually receive the result that we were expecting, which is hello from the API. So actually this is our original response we were expecting, from our get method we have created in our code. So let us actually jump into how we can make exactly some dummy data that we will be using to test, because we are going to be using a Johnson. We have another section on how to set up our database and also be connected to our Node.js. So let's use like in-memory database. Actually, I will be using a Johnson, and here we go on this part. So beneath the use, let me just say let users be equal to id. I want to make it 1, and have a name. Let me just give it Alice, right? And this, I duplicate it and I provide the second one. Actually, these are the data I'm going to be using while testing my API. So I remove this one, terminate it. Now this is my in-memory database I create. Actually, it's a sample data just to be using while testing my routes. And right now, let's see how exactly we can get all users. So right here, let me just say app.get, because I want to retrieve all users. I want to see my endpoint of users, name it users, and here I make my argument, the request and response. And on this part, here I make my response, which will come in Johnson, because we will be passing the Johnson data users. And here we go, we have already made our Johnson part. So let's test and see if we will see exactly these results. Let me terminate my server and rerun it again here on this part. So, and when I go back to my when I return back to my route here on Postman to test my API, let me just name this routes, this, to make sure that they differ from each other. And here I will make another request. Here I will name this one get all users, and here on get all users I will put my IP on this part. Alright, my endpoint API, and here I'll make sure that I add user as we have name it on this part. So let's send our request and see exactly if we will retrieve or get all users based on the information we are passing through the response. When I send, boom, you see that right here on this part we are retrieving the current information we have on our part right here, the one we have created. Nice. So after this part, let's see how we can actually get user by ID here, because you can see on this part we have a different username, and we want exactly to retrieve only a single user by using only one ID. How do we make it? So on this part we have again to return to our main code. Let me stop my server and clear this one. Okay, and I write app.get and here I'll make sure that I'm passing user, and here I'll be getting ID passing through URL, and here I make sure that I have my argument, which is request address, because this is necessary for all requests. And here there is a thing that we have to make sure. Here we are passing a parameter, which is ID that we have here. How do we actually get that parameter? We have to define exactly the variable that will receive that parameter here, which is user ID, and we are passing this as ID because it will, we are passing it as integer because it will come as string. And here I will do request dot params dot id, exactly because in our request we are having params that is being passed, which is id, the one that we have put on this part of our exactly URL that will be sending. And here we are done with defining our user ID. So how do we find exactly the data that we want? So from our users we have here, we have to find any specific ID that we have from the data we currently have, and here we will exactly create the user. This user variable will contain exactly the user that we need to find, and this user will use find, and this find we will try to use this u that we'll be using to actually retrieve some of the part that we want, and id, and this id, this is a condition where id will be equal to user id, like the one we have defined on this part. So this is how exactly we retrieve the user that we want, and how exactly we will handle if we do not find that user exists. So we will set a condition. This condition, let me say, if user is not found, this is not, user is not. So we will return our response as status, and this status, it will send status of 404, which is exactly means not found. And JSON, we have to actually pass a message, and this message will be mentioning that user not found, like this. Alright, this is the way to set a condition that whenever it finds out that there is no user, instead of returning some empty or like thing which doesn't exist, it will actually provide this response that user not found. But what if user is found? We have to respond with our JSON, and here we have to do a response, and we have to pass a user as expected, like this. So let's test our endpoint we have created on this part. We also make sure that we start with our server and return to our postman, and we create another request. Make sure I have different requests, and on this part I will say get user id, get user id by id, and here we go. So on this part, let me try to pass because right here you can see that we have exactly only id1 and id2. Let me pass only a wrong id that we don't have. Let me pass like 3. What will happen when we do a send on this part? They will say they will provide the response we're expecting, which is 404 not found, exactly the one we have set on this part, 404 status. And alright, like this, 404 not found. So what if I am going to pass like exactly some specific ID which exists? Let me pass like 2 when I send. Okay, there is a problem. Let me first check the reason why we are facing with this. Do a return. Okay, refresh again. This start my server and I do send. Whoa, there is a problem in our code, so we have to find out what is the problem. Let's go back in our code base and check what's wrong with it. So we have made user ID and it's getting from as should be. We have user which is equal to users, exactly is users, yes, and it must find user ID must be equal to user ID. So if user not found, to return status, which is this. And okay, alright guys, you see here I have made a mistake. I didn't put /. This was the mistake. Make sure that whenever you write your code, you even check human error that mostly happens. So let me restart my server. When I go back and let me test again my code, say like this one. Yeah, you see right now, okay, I was getting the original error, but right now I have the actual response I have mentioned, which is the message user not found. And because we are not actually getting any user of user ID, which is 3, but if I just use like 2 and I send, boom, we will get the current user that we needed to find, which is Bob. Exactly. If you check like our in-memory database, we have created a simple one, which is ID. It contains the one which is Bob. Yeah, it is correct. So our get user by ID is success. So let's jump and see how we can exactly create a new user. And by creating a new user, it's a simple step we have to follow to make it very simple one. You have to do app dot, because we're using get to get data or retrieve data that we have in our in-memory database. Here we are going to use post, which means it's like to ask our server to save our record that we are sending or data that we are sending. So on this post, what we have to do is just to make sure we made our path, which is the users, and the request we pass as like this. And here I'm going to make sure that this crossed. Always make sure this is crossed. So what are we going to do? Because we are adding data, we will create a variable that we define a new user. And this new user, we have an object. This object, it will contain an ID, and this ID will hold users dot length, because if check our users currently, our users here, which we have only 1 and 2, it will take the length of those users and add 1, because you cannot have the user without ID. So I must make sure that I add another 1 user after the one that I have. So, and I put a name where I will do the name that we will have. Here I will take my request, because we are using post, we'll be sending data, and those data will be actually be extracted from a request. This request, and this request, exactly what we will be accessing is body, because the body is the one that we hold our data that we will send from our interface that we are using actually right now, which is Postman, that we are using to test our API. And we will take the name of that user we actually want, and let's close our object. So after this part, what do we have to do? We have exactly created our constant new user, so we have to push what we call push in our users that we have. How to put this new user into our users. We have to do constant, not constant, I mean users, because we already have the users, and we do push on these users. What are we going to push? Our new users, which means we are going to add another record into the record we currently have here in our array that holds object. So, and after this, we will just do a return response, and the return response will have a status. The status will be the O1, which will show that records created successful, and we'll pass a Johnson of new user, like this. And we are done with create user right now. So let's test our code and see what it will give us. So npm start, and you go to our Postman. Let's create another new request, and this request we will name it create a new user, and we have to make sure we have a new user, and the one that we are using is post. And this post means we will be actually asking our server to save our data, and then we have to go to the body, and we choose exactly the body that we are sending here. Choose body here, and choose low, and low it will be receiving exactly the data that will be passing here. It will be, we say only name, and this name, let me use mine, Samuel, and when I send this data, must be like this, and when I send my data, you will see it will have a new record of ID3 name, which is Samuel. So here my record has been created, as you can see on the message I have here, which is created new resource has been created, which means this our code is success. So after this, what's next? Let's try to make an update for one of the record we have. So to make an update for one of the record, make sure that I'm saved this. We will go to our code again, close my server, and here we make update, because we are going to update our code, which I will just use put like this, and I pass users because we are going to get we will pass one parameter, and this parameter will hold exactly an ID of the data we want to update. And here I'll pass my request and response, and after this I will have to actually define my user ID, and this we have a parse integer. And this parse integer, we make sure that we get our param.id, and after this we'll have to do a constant user. And this user we get users dot find, and this one we will try to get user. Where are we getting the user? So the user we are getting will have an ID, which here must be equal to ID, user ID. So alright, and also after this we can send condition. If it doesn't find any user, it will make sure that it return response dot status, which is 404 dot Johnson. This Johnson will be message. This message will have user not found, just like this. Alright, and again, if user is not found, we just do a return, not to return, because we have exactly to extract also the data from our body. This data will contain the name of our exactly the name of our updated user, or the name of our current user. So let me show you how. So we have to write user.name, because it's a name that we are updating, and we are getting the updated name from request body name, because it's the one that we are sending exactly. And here, if it doesn't exactly find the name that I'm sending, it must make sure that it just remain with the current name I have, so it doesn't mess with my in-memory or database I've created, a simple one that will hold my data. And after this, I'll just return my Johnson, and this Johnson will have my current user I have updated. So far we are good to go and test our endpoint we have created here. And on this part I have to run start, and after run start, it's running smoothly. Okay, I will also add a new request, and this new request will be update user by ID, just like that. Let me use like user 2, and on this part, because we are using update, we'll be using put method. You must also make sure that the method you're using is matching with the current method that you are using on your endpoint. Make sure that you are good on that. So after this, I will go to, because I remember I will go to my low, and here I make sure that I define my Johnson, and here I want to make, because in our in-memory we currently have on ID2, let me show you, we have Bob. Let me name this Bob, let me rename it to the name Grace, like this. And after naming, I have to check if everything is on right way. Localhost 3, okay, we are good to go. And when I send data, you will find out that my response is exactly sending the update, and we found out that the request was success. So, and here we are done with our endpoint on how to use put method. Let me save my data. Alright, so the last part, which is most of the part, which it is not complicated most of the time for the people who knows, but it is also most dangerous one. When you actually apply it wrongly, you can delete your whole data, or you can mess up with your database. Delete part. So on delete part, can come again in our source code, clear. On delete part, hard write our app dot delete, our method that we'll be using, and here we just say users. Also we will delete based on ID and request, because every user has a unique ID. So on this part, we will have exactly to call our user, mention our user ID, which will be first integer dot params ID, and here exactly after this we extract the user we want. Users filter, use filter to filter our data we want. So ID, and then after this I have only the only thing I will do on this part. It's simple. I will have to, let me say, if I want to delete a user, so let me just put a condition that will actually show that if user is not equal to one of the user that I'm extracting right here, it will just show user deleted. Let me say like this, just a simple turn, but we will deal with also the way we can connect our real life database, so that we can test exactly how to do all of these operations, because this is the start of using our API, testing how exactly they work, and you must make sure that exactly it is providing the data that we need. So on this part, we have exactly to make sure that our users filter which will provide you which is exactly we get user ID, which is not exactly equal to user ID. Exactly, this is a simple condition I just made to make sure that we see how exactly this data perform. So let me go to my let's test and see how date exactly work. Let me add a request, and I do delete user by ID, and this on date user by ID. I will use a method which is delete, and on this part let me use one and go because we not need body here, we not need body, only just a request that will send on backend and just delete our data. And when I send, I didn't start my server as expected. Alright guys, so let me again run my delete. You see, my data will be deleted as we have expected. So this is exactly how we can use our endpoint, can create them, use them to extract data, to save data, and also to remove data in our in memory we have created, as simple as that. But for furthermore advanced operation, like making sure that we actually not like right now we've been using start many times, restart our server. There is also another uh, there is another library that we can add so that we do not exactly restart our server like that. It will actually automatically restart our server the way we want. So after this, we will be seeing how to work on the real database. Next time we'll be dealing with MongoDB. The MongoDB we will actually connect it to our script to make sure that we can do some operation, a real life operation that exactly can uh, that operation there will be exactly like the one I have used right here, creating data, getting data, updating data, and or actually saving data. So by this we have a basic knowledge on how exactly to create our API, on everything that we need, the operation that we all need, and also we will see how to secure the API in different ways. So thank you guys. So that brings us to the end of today's live stream. I hope you found this session on building a REST API with Node.js and Express both informative and helpful. Thank you so much for joining me today and for your participation. If you enjoyed this session, please consider liking the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with others who might benefit. I truly appreciate your time, guys, and support, and I look forward to seeing you in our next live stream. Until then, keep learning and keep building. Have a great day.